Daniel woke at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, or was it Wednesday? It didn't matter anymore. The days had become an amorphous mass of empty hours, where time had lost all meaning. The curtains remained closed, as they had been for weeks, blocking out any shred of sunlight that dared remind him that outside there was a functioning world, people living, dreams being realized. He stared at the ceiling of his Minneapolis apartment, counting the damp spots for the 1,000th time. 32, always 32. That was the only certainty in his life now. His cell phone vibrated incessantly on the nightstand, probably his sister Sarah calling for the 10th time that week, or was it his mother? He didn't have the strength to check. He didn't have the strength for anything. Depression had arrived like a giant, sneaky wave. At first, Daniel thought it was just work fatigue. Then he thought it was the end of his relationship with Jennifer. It's normal to be sad after 5 years together, he told himself. But this wasn't sadness. Sadness has relief. It has an end. This was different. It was as if someone had drained the world of all its color, all its texture, all its flavor. All that was left was a gray, dense, suffocating void. It had been 3 months since he'd quit his job at the tech company where he worked. His supervisor, Michael, had tried to convince him to take medical leave. "Daniel, you're one of our best developers. Take some time off, get treatment, come back when you're ready," he'd said, genuinely concerned. But Daniel could only think, why? To go back and keep pretending everything makes sense? The fridge was empty except for a 3-week-old frozen pizza and a few beers. He hadn't felt truly hungry in so long that his body had stopped complaining. He'd lost 30 pounds. His clothes felt like they belonged to someone else. In fact, he felt like they belonged to someone else, the Daniel from before, the one who laughed, who had plans, who woke up excited to take on challenges. That Daniel was dead. All that was left was this empty shell lying in bed. The worst weren't the days, the worst were the nights. 3 in the morning, when insomnia kept him awake and his thoughts turned to cruel accusations. "You're a failure. Everyone was right about you. Jennifer was right to leave. Your parents are disappointed. Your friends have forgotten about you." The voice in his head was relentless, repeating the same phrases like a broken record. His best friend Tyler had stopped visiting after the last time. Daniel had yelled at him, saying horrible things just to make him leave. "I can't take your motivational coaching tone anymore, Tyler. You don't understand anything." He still remembered the hurt look on Tyler's face, the tears his friend tried to hide as he walked out the door. Another bridge burned, another person he had pushed away. Daniel dragged himself to the bathroom, avoiding the mirror. He couldn't bear to see the reflection of that stranger with sunken eyes and stubble. He'd taken 3 antidepressant pills, or was it 4? Dr. Patterson had adjusted the dosage at his last appointment 3 weeks ago. Or was it a month? He should come back, but what was the point? She stood there with her notebook and her careful questions. "How are you feeling today, Daniel?" How to answer. How to put into words this inner black hole that swallows every spark of hope. Today, however, something would be different. He didn't know it yet, but at 4:47 p.m., a phone call would change everything. The phone rang with an annoying insistence. Daniel considered ignoring it, as he did with every other call, but something in him, perhaps just the automatic reflex of years of being a functional person, made his hand reach out and answer. "Daniel? Daniel? Is that you?" The voice was that of an older man, shaky, desperate. It took him a few seconds to recognize it. It was Robert, the father of his childhood friend Marcus. "Robert," Daniel murmured, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Thank God you answered. I didn't know who else to call." Robert's voice broke. "It's Marcus. Daniel, he tried to take his own life last night." The world stopped. Daniel sat up in bed abruptly, his heart racing. Marcus, his best friend from high school. The guy who always had a smile on his face, who played basketball every Saturday, who had married Amy 2 years ago in a beautiful ceremony. What? How? Is he? The words didn't come out right. He's alive. He's in St. Mary's Hospital, in intensive care. He's been on a massive amount of medication. If Amy hadn't come home early from work... Robert couldn't finish the sentence. Daniel, he left a letter. He mentioned you. He said you'd lost touch, but that you were one of the only people who might understand. Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Understanding. Yes, he understood. He understood perfectly that darkness, that desire to simply make it all stop. How many times in the last few weeks had he considered it himself? How many times had he stood on the balcony of his 10th floor apartment, looking down, wondering how easy it would be to take just one step? He's asking to speak with you, Robert continued. The doctor said he can have short visits. I know it's a lot to ask. I know you haven't spoken in a while, but could you come, please? Daniel looked around his apartment. The mess, the empty bottles, the stacked pizza boxes. He hadn't left the house in 2 weeks. The thought of getting dressed, of taking an Uber, of being in a hospital with people, it all seemed impossible, an insurmountable mountain. But it was Marcus. Marcus, who defended him from the bullies in 7th grade. Marcus, who helped him study for his math tests. Marcus, who held his hand at his grandfather's funeral when they were 16. Marcus, who now lay in a hospital bed because he tried to do what Daniel thought about doing almost every day. I'll go, Daniel heard his own voice say, as if it belonged to someone else. Give me half an hour. When he hung up, something strange happened. For the first time in months, Daniel felt something beyond emptiness. It was small, fragile, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something more primal. It was purpose. Even if it was only for a few hours, he had something to do. Someone needed him. He dragged himself to the shower, letting the hot water cascade over his skeletal body. He found a relatively clean shirt. He combed his hair for the first time in weeks. Every movement was a battle, every action demanding strength he hadn't known he still possessed, but he kept going. When the Uber arrived, the driver, a man named James, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Hospital, right? Hope everything's okay, man. Me too, Daniel replied quietly, watching the city pass by outside the window. Minneapolis felt strange, as if he were seeing it all for the first time. People on the sidewalks, going about their lives. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. When was the last time he'd noticed a sunset? St. Mary's Hospital loomed ahead, large and intimidating. Daniel paid the fare and stood at the entrance for a long moment, gathering his courage. His heart was pounding, his hands trembling. Anxiety threatened to paralyze him on the spot, but he thought of Marcus, alone in that room, and took the first step, then another, and another. The hospital hallway smelled of disinfectant and quiet desperation. Daniel's footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor as he followed the signs to the ICU. Each door he passed hid a story of pain, and he felt the weight of them all. Nurses hurried past. Doctors chatted in hushed tones. There, life and death danced a delicate waltz. In room 347, Robert sat in a plastic chair, his face buried in his hands. When he saw Daniel, he stood up quickly, his eyes red and puffy. You came. Thank you, God, thank you. He hugged Daniel tightly, and Daniel felt his father's pain transfer to him. He's awake now. Amy's inside, but you can come in, please. Daniel nodded, unable to form words. Robert slowly opened the door. Marcus lay in the hospital bed, connected to several machines that beeped monotonously. He looked smaller, frail, a ghostly version of the robust athlete Daniel remembered. Amy sat beside him, holding his hand, her face streaked with seemingly endless tears. When she saw Daniel, she forced a sad smile and stood up. I'll let you guys talk, she whispered, squeezing Daniel's shoulder as she passed. "Thank you for coming." Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment that felt like an eternity. Marcus slowly turned his head, and their eyes met. There was something in that look that Daniel recognized immediately, the same emptiness he saw in the mirror, the same existential exhaustion, the same surrender. "Daniel," Marcus said, his voice weak and hoarse, "you really came." "Of course I came." Daniel pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down, his legs shaking. "Marcus, what happened?" Marcus let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "What happened? It just so happened that I finally admitted that I can't pretend anymore. Pretending everything's okay, pretending I'm happy, pretending waking up every day isn't the hardest thing in the world." Tears began to stream down his face. "I'm so tired, Daniel, so incredibly tired." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. It was his own words, his own thoughts coming out of Marcus's mouth. "I know," he whispered. "I understand." "Yeah?" Marcus stared at him intently. "How are you, Daniel? Robert told me he had to call several times before you answered. How long has it been since we spoke? 8 months? A year?" "Almost 2 years," Daniel admitted, guilt weighing heavily on his chest. "After Jennifer broke up with me, I kind of disappeared." "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, and there was genuine concern in his eyes that made Daniel almost break down. Daniel laughed humorlessly. "Am I? I haven't left the house in weeks. I lost my job. I've pushed away everyone who cared about me. I spend my days counting stains on the ceiling and the minutes until I can take another pill and sleep, because sleeping is the only time I don't feel this hole inside me." The words came out in a rush, as if a dam had broken. "Yesterday, or the day before, I don't even know, I stood on the balcony for 2 hours thinking about jumping. The only reason I didn't jump was because I was too lazy to even do that." Marcus closed his eyes, silent tears wetting the pillow. "So you really understand." "I see," Daniel confirmed, his own voice breaking. "Marcus, what's going on with you? From the outside, your life seems perfect. You have Amy, you have your job at the law firm, you have..." "A shell," Marcus interrupted. "All of this is just a beautiful shell hiding a complete emptiness, Daniel. Amy is amazing, but how can I love her when I can't even love myself? How can I be a good husband when I wake up every day wishing I hadn't?" He stared at the ceiling as if searching for answers there. "At work, I'm the successful lawyer. At home, I'm the attentive husband. With my parents, I'm the perfect son. But when I'm alone, when I don't have to perform, I'm nobody. I feel nothing. It's like being dead but having to keep breathing." Daniel took Marcus's hand, and the two men stood there, two castaways clinging to the same wreckage in the middle of the ocean. "Why did you mention me in the letter?" Daniel asked softly. Marcus opened his eyes and stared at him. "Because in our 10th year high school graduation letter, you wrote something that stuck with me forever. You said, 'Marcus, you've always been my true brother. If darkness ever comes, don't let it win alone. Call me.' Do you remember?" Daniel didn't remember, but now, looking at his friend in that bed, he understood. Darkness had come for both of them. They sat in silence for long minutes, just holding each other's hands. The beeping of the heart monitors marked the time, reminding them that at least for now, they were both still alive. It was Marcus who broke the silence first. "You know what's scariest?" he said, staring up at the white hospital ceiling. "It's not death. Death felt like a relief. The scary thing is waking up today and realizing I'm still here. And now I have to face Amy, my parents, my co-workers, everyone knowing I tried. Everyone looking at me with that look of pity and fear, like I might break at any second." Daniel shook Marcus's hand. "And you're going to break it?" Marcus was silent for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me is relieved I failed, but the other part still wants to disappear. How do I fight this, Danielle? How do we fight our own minds? It was the question Daniel asked himself every day. He thought of all the times Dr. Patterson had tried to explain with her clinical terms and therapeutic techniques. But here, in that hospital room, this was no time for medical jargon. I don't know, Daniel admitted, but I know that being here right now, talking to you, it's the first time in months that I felt truly present. Not just existing, but present. He took a deep breath. When your dad called, I was in the exact same mental place you were yesterday. I had given up, Marcus, completely, but something in his voice, something about knowing you needed me, it made me get out of that bed. Marcus turned his head to look at him, tears streaming down his face. So I saved you too, in some twisted way. I guess so, Daniel said, and for the first time in a long time, he cracked something resembling a smile. How ironic, isn't it? Two guys drowning, and somehow we managed to stay afloat just by holding on to each other. The door opened softly, and a nurse named Linda came in to check Marcus's vitals. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes that had seen a lot of pain. How are we doing here? She asked, checking the monitors. Surviving, Marcus replied, and there was enormous weight in that simple word. Linda smiled understandingly. Just surviving is a lot, dear. One day at a time. She adjusted the IV and left as quietly as she had entered. One day at a time, Marcus repeated. Everyone says that. But what about when each day feels like a century? When each hour is torture? Daniel thought about it. He hated that phrase too. It was easy for people who'd never felt that weight to say just hold on for another day. But then something clicked in his mind. Maybe that's it then. Maybe we don't need to think in days. How about hours or minutes? Like this. Let's make a pact, Daniel said, leaning forward. Let's promise each other that we'll survive the next 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. And when those 5 minutes are up, we'll promise each other 5 more. And so on. Marcus frowned. 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Because 5 minutes is possible, even when a whole day seems impossible. And if at any point you can't promise the next 5 minutes, you call me. It doesn't matter what time it is. 3 in the morning, noon, any time, and I do the same. We survive 5 minutes at a time together. Marcus stared at Daniel for a long moment, processing. You would really do that, even though you're going through the same hell. Especially since I'm going through the same hell, Daniel replied. Marcus, I've spent the last few months completely alone in this darkness, and it's only gotten worse. Maybe we can't get out of it alone, but maybe together we can at least keep from sinking any deeper. 5 minutes, Marcus repeated, testing the words. What if I fail again? So you call me first. And I'll remind you that you only need to survive 5 more minutes, and I'll survive those 5 minutes with you, the two of us getting through together. Daniel felt something strange in his chest, something warm, something he hadn't felt in so long he almost didn't recognize it. It was a tiny spark of hope. Besides, he continued, I need you to do the same for me, because I don't know if I can do this alone. Marcus squeezed Daniel's hand tighter. 5 minutes at a time, he agreed, his voice still weak, but with a hint of determination. We have a pact. Outside the room, unbeknownst to them, Robert was leaning against the wall with Amy, both listening through the half-open door, tears of relief streaming down their faces. Daniel left the hospital at 9 o'clock. The sky was dark, dotted with stars he hadn't seen in months, or rather, stars he'd seen but never really observed. Now standing on the sidewalk waiting for another Uber, he looked up and actually saw them, tiny points of light piercing the infinite darkness, persisting despite the emptiness around them. His phone vibrated. A text from Marcus. First 5-minute check. Still here. How about you? Daniel typed back. Still here. Next check in 5. It was ridiculous in a way. Two 32-year-old adults texting each other every 5 minutes like they were toddlers learning to swim. But it was working. For some absurd reason, it was working. In the Uber ride home, the driver, a woman named Patricia, tried to make conversation. Visiting someone in the hospital. A friend, Daniel replied, surprised by his own willingness to speak. He's going through a hard time. It's a good thing he has you, Patricia said with a genuine smile in the rearview mirror. Everyone needs someone in difficult times. Daniel thought about it. He hadn't had anyone for the past few months because he'd pushed everyone away. But Marcus had brought him back, and now they both had someone. When he got home, the apartment was exactly as he'd left it. A depressing mess that screamed abandonment. But for the first time, it bothered him. Not much, not enough to warrant a thorough cleaning, but enough to bother him. He grabbed some empty bottles and threw them in the trash. He opened a window, letting in the fresh night air. Small steps, tiny. Your cell phone rang. Tyler. Daniel stared at the name on the screen, transfixed. Their last conversation had been that horrible argument. Tyler called every week, but Daniel never answered. Now, his hand shaking, he answered. Daniel? Tyler's voice was shocked. You answered? I got it, Daniel said, his throat tight. Tyler, I need to apologize for what I said, for the way I treated you. You were just trying to help, and I... Dude, stop, Tyler interrupted, and Daniel could hear the emotion in his friend's voice. You don't have to apologize. I understand. Well, I don't completely understand, but I understand that you were going through something I couldn't reach. But Daniel, I'm here. I've always been here. Daniel felt tears burning his eyes. I know, and I'm sorry for pushing you away. I didn't know how to accept help when I could barely get out of bed. And now, Tyler asked gently, how are you now? I still can barely get out of bed, Daniel admitted. But today I did. I went to visit Marcus in the hospital. He tried to kill himself, Tyler. There was a heavy silence on the other end. Oh my God, is he okay? He's alive. And we made a pact, a stupid pact to survive 5 minutes at a time. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's the first thing that's made sense in months. It doesn't sound crazy, Tyler said firmly. It sounds like survival. And survival is everything, man. It's everything. He took a deep breath. Daniel, can I come over? It doesn't have to be now, but I could bring a pizza, watch a game, anything. No pressure, no pep talk. Just being together. Daniel looked around the messy apartment. Embarrassment threatened to make him refuse, but then his phone vibrated. Another text from Marcus. Minute 25. Harder now. Amy left to get food. Very quiet room. Daniel responded immediately. I'm here with you. Let's go to minute 30 together. Put on some music, anything to break the silence. And then he said to Tyler, can you come over tomorrow? The apartment is a mess, but I think I need some company. I'll be there at noon, Tyler replied, and Daniel could hear the relieved smile in his voice. With pizza and non-alcoholic beer, I remember you're on antidepressants. After they hung up, Daniel sat on the couch and really looked at his life. It wasn't pretty. It was far from pretty. But for the first time in months, it didn't seem completely hopeless. It seemed survivable. 5 minutes at a time. His phone vibrated again. This time it was Sarah, his sister. Daniel, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I'm worried. Please tell me you're okay. He could ignore it, as he always did. But the pact with Marcus wasn't just about Marcus. It was about not being alone in the darkness. It was about letting people in, even when every fiber of his being wanted to close all the doors. He typed, I'm not well, Sarah, but today I got out of the house, and I'm trying, 5 minutes at a time. The answer came immediately. Then let's spend 10 minutes together. Can I call you? Daniel smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. You can. As the phone rang, he stared out the open window. The Minneapolis night was alive with city sounds. Cars passing, people laughing in the street, life happening. And he was there in the middle of it all, surviving. 1 minute at a time. 2 weeks later, Daniel woke at 4 in the morning with his chest tight and cold sweat soaking the sheets. Panic was a living creature inside him, tearing at his insides, stealing his breath. The walls of the room seemed to close in around him, the ceiling collapsing, the floor opening up. He was falling, sinking, dying. His fingers were shaking so badly it took him 3 tries to unlock his phone. He texted Marcus, I can't do another 5 minutes, I'm sorry. The answer came within seconds. Answer the phone, now. The phone rang and Daniel answered, unable to speak, just breathing heavily. Daniel, listen to me. Marcus's voice came steady over the phone, though still hoarse from the hospital stay. You're having a panic attack. I know what that's like. Breathe with me, man. 4 seconds in, hold, 4 seconds out. I can't, Daniel managed to say between sobs. You can, with me, now. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Marcus repeated the pattern, his voice like an anchor in the middle of the storm. It took 15 minutes, but eventually Daniel's breathing began to return to normal. The panic was still there, lurking in the shadows, but no longer completely consuming him. Still here? Marcus asked softly. Still here, Daniel whispered, exhausted. Good. Now tell me what happened. Daniel was silent for a moment, struggling to put the chaos into words. I had a dream about Jennifer. We were happy, laughing like we used to be. And when I woke up, it took me a few seconds to remember it was over, that she was gone, that I'd messed up. And suddenly, it all came back. All that pain, that emptiness, that crushing weight. And I realized, Marcus, nothing's really changed. I'm still unemployed, I'm still broke. I'm still the same pathetic person who can't even get out of bed most days. Stop, Marcus said firmly. You're doing it again. That thing we do where we turn a bad moment into evidence that we're complete garbage. My therapist has a fancy name for it, catastrophizing. Your therapist? Daniel asked, surprised. Yes. Part of the deal for leaving the hospital was starting therapy 3 times a week. At first, I thought it would be pointless. Just another person telling me to think positive and be grateful. But Dr. Chen is different. She doesn't minimize the pain. She just helps you navigate it. Marcus paused. Daniel, are you in therapy? I was. I stopped going a month ago. I thought it wasn't working. Or did you stop going because it was working and it scared you? Marcus suggested. Because I did, 3 times. Every time I started to get a little better, I sabotaged it. Because at least with depression, I know what to expect. Improvement is uncharted territory, and uncharted territory is scary. Daniel had never thought of it that way. Maybe, he admitted. Call Dr. Patterson tomorrow. Schedule an appointment, and I'll come to mine too. We can even schedule it the same day and have coffee afterward. Compare notes on how our brains are trying to sabotage us. Despite everything, Daniel let out a weak laugh. We really are an item, aren't we? The worst, Marcus agreed, and there was lightness in his voice. But at least we're a case together. And Daniel, that dream about Jennifer, it hurts. I know it hurts. But you know what else the dream tells you? That you can still feel joy, even if it's in a dream. That the part of you that can be happy still exists somewhere inside. But it's not real, Daniel argued. Not yet, Marcus corrected. But maybe, eventually. If we keep surviving 5 minutes at a time. He sighed. Look, I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. Yesterday, I spent 4 hours on the couch, unable to move. Amy had to literally drag me into the shower. But you know what? I took that shower. And today, I managed to walk to the corner. Tomorrow, Maybe I'll make it to the bakery. They're microscopic steps, but they're still steps. How do you do it? Daniel asked. How do you wake up every day and choose to keep going when everything inside you is screaming to give up? Marcus was silent for a long moment. Honestly, because I promised you 5 minutes, and you promised me 5 minutes, and if I back out, you're on your own, and I can't do that to you. So I keep going. For me, for you, for Amy, for my parents. 5 minutes turns into 10, 10 turns into an hour. Some hours are absolute hell, but others are tolerable. Daniel looked out the window. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first rays of sunlight. 5 more minutes then, he asked, his voice small. 5 more minutes, Marcus confirmed. And Daniel, call Dr. Patterson today. Promise. I promise. After they hung up, Daniel didn't go back to sleep. He sat in bed, watching the sun slowly rise over Minneapolis. The panic attack had passed, but it had left its mark. He was exhausted, vulnerable, raw. But he was alive. And in that moment, in that particular minute, that was enough. 3 months later, Daniel sat in Dr. Patterson's waiting room, flipping through a magazine without actually reading anything. His therapy sessions had become routine, twice a week without fail. Not because he always wanted to go, but because he'd promised. To Marcus, to himself, to the people who cared about him. Daniel, Dr. Patterson appeared in the doorway, her smile warm and professional. She was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and a presence that made people feel safe. Ready? In the office, Daniel settled into the familiar chair. I have news, he said, and there was something different in his voice. Not exactly excitement, but a kind of cautious satisfaction. I'm listening, she replied, picking up her notepad. I sent my resume to a few companies this week, 5 companies to be exact. The words came out quickly, as if he needed to say them before he lost his nerve. And one of them, Tech Wave, got back to me. They want to schedule an interview. Dr. Patterson smiled genuinely. Daniel, that's wonderful. How are you feeling about this? Terrified, he admitted. Like completely terrified. I stayed up all night thinking about all the ways I could mess up. What if I freeze in the interview? What if they ask about the gap on my resume? How do I explain that I couldn't get out of bed for 6 months? And what would you do if they actually asked? She asked calmly. Daniel took a deep breath. They'd practiced this in their sessions. I would tell the truth. That I went through a period of severe depression, that I sought treatment, and that I'm now in a place where I can return to work. Exactly. And notice what you just said. I'm in a place where I can now. You're recognizing your progress, Daniel. 3 months ago, you couldn't shower without help. Today, you're sending out resumes. I know, but Daniel hesitated. It's just that part of me thinks I don't deserve it, that I messed things up so badly that I shouldn't get a second chance. That's depression talking, she pointed out, not you. And when that voice comes in, what do we do? A question, Daniel recited. Ask, is this fact or feeling? And in this case, it's feeling. The fact is, I have skills, experience, and I'm working hard on my recovery. The session continued, navigating fears and progress, ups and downs. When it ended, Daniel felt exhausted but lighter. Therapy was like that, painful but necessary, like disinfecting a wound. At the cafe where he'd arranged to meet Marcus, he arrived first. He ordered a coffee, not the decaf he drank when he could barely function, but a real espresso, small changes, small victories. Marcus walked in 10 minutes later, a smile reaching his eyes. He'd gained a bit of weight, a good sign, considering how emaciated he'd been in the hospital. Man, you're not going to believe this, he said, sitting down. What? I went back to the office today. Only part-time, but I did. Marcus looked simultaneously proud and scared. I sat down at my desk, opened my computer, and you know what? I worked. Like really worked. For 4 hours straight. Marcus, that's amazing. Daniel felt a surge of genuine pride for his friend. How did it go with the classmates? It was weird at first. Everyone was walking on eggshells around me, afraid to say the wrong thing. But then Stephen, my cubicle mate, just gave me a hug and said, "It's great to have you back, man. The coffee here sucked without you to complain about it." And it was normal, weirdly normal. They spent the next hour sharing their small victories and big fears. Marcus recounted how he was finally able to be intimate with Amy again, after months of guilt and shame killing any desire. Daniel talked about how he'd called his mom and had a real conversation, without pretending everything was okay, but also without drowning in despair. "You know what's funny?" Daniel said, stirring his coffee. "I still have bad days, like really bad. Last week I spent 2 whole days in bed just dragging myself to the bathroom. But the difference now is that I know it will pass. That tomorrow or the day after or next week I'll have a better day. And you know why?" Marcus leaned forward. "Because you've seen better days. You have concrete evidence now that it's possible. Before it was just blind faith. Now it's experience." A group of young people entered the cafe, laughing loudly, completely absorbed in their carefree lives. Daniel watched them, and for the first time in a long time felt no bitter envy, no anger for not being like them, just neutrality. Maybe even a little hope that one day he could laugh like that too. "I got a call from Jennifer," Daniel blurted out suddenly. Marcus paused with his cup in midair. "And she heard from Sarah that I was in therapy, that I was getting better. She wanted to talk, maybe have coffee." Daniel looked out the window. I said no. Why? Because I finally understood that she didn't leave me because I was depressed. She left me because I refused help, pushed her away, and made it impossible for anyone to stay. And I'm still not ready for a relationship. I'm barely even managing to have a relationship with myself. He smiled sadly. But the fact that I was able to say no without falling apart, that's progress. That's a lot of progress, Marcus agreed. And Daniel, I'm proud of you, man. Really. The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. "I'm proud of you too," he replied, his voice cracking. "We're doing it, not perfectly, but we're doing it." Marcus raised his cup. "In the next 5 minutes." Daniel clinked his cup against Marcus's. "In the next 5 minutes." 6 months after the hospital, Marcus called Daniel at 2 in the morning. Daniel woke instantly, his heart racing. Calls in the middle of the night were never good news. "Marcus, what happened?" Silence on the other end, then a shaky breath. "Daniel, I need you to come here. Now, please." "I'm coming. Address." 20 minutes later, Daniel was knocking on Marcus's apartment door. Amy opened it, her face pale and her eyes red. "He's in the bedroom," she whispered. "I don't know what to do. He's not responding properly, just keeps repeating your name." Daniel entered the room and found Marcus sitting on the floor, propped up against the bed, hugging his knees. He stared into space, swaying slightly. Beside him on the floor was a bottle of pills, still unopened. "Marcus," Daniel said softly, sitting down beside him on the floor. "I'm here." "I almost did it again," Marcus whispered, looking at the jar. "I bought them today. I hid them from Amy. I stared at them for 2 hours, Daniel. 2 hours thinking how easy it would be, what a relief it would be. But you didn't take it," Daniel pointed out, keeping his voice calm despite the terror he felt. "And you called me. Why?" "Because I promised," Marcus said, tears streaming. 5 minutes. I promised I'd call if I couldn't promise another 5 minutes, and I couldn't. I can't." He finally looked at Daniel, and there was so much desperation in that look. "Why is it still so hard? Why, after everything, the therapy, the meds, the work, the good days, why do there still be nights like this where I want to disappear?" Daniel took the bottle of pills and handed it to Amy, who was waiting at the door. She left silently, clutching the bottle like a bomb. Then Daniel turned to Marcus. Because depression isn't something you completely overcome, like the flu. It's something you learn to manage, to live with. And some days, you manage it well. Other days, it catches you by surprise and knocks you to the ground. Daniel took a deep breath. Marcus, do you remember that day in the hospital when we made the pact? Do you remember what I said? That we would survive 5 minutes at a time. And we did. For 6 months we did. But the pact wasn't just about surviving the good times. It was especially about surviving the bad times. Times like this. Daniel grabbed Marcus's shoulder. And do you know what the difference is between today and that night in the hospital? Marcus shook his head. You called early today. You didn't wait until you had the bottle open, the pills in your hand. You called while you were still fighting. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength, Marcus sobbed. It feels like failure, like all the progress means nothing. It means everything, Daniel insisted. You're back to work, you're getting treatment, you have days where you actually live, not just survive. But depression is a liar, Marcus. It wants you to believe that one bad night can erase 6 months of progress, and that's a lie. How do you do it? Marcus asked, his voice breaking. How do you keep believing when everything seems hopeless? Daniel thought for a moment. You want the honest truth. Some days, I don't believe it. Some days, I wake up, and the first thing I think is, not again. But I get up anyway. Do you know why? Why? Because you count on me, Tyler counts on me, Sarah counts on me, my mom counts on me, and on days when I can't do it for myself, I do it for them. Daniel looked Marcus in the eye. And you do it for me too. If you had taken those pills today, I would lose my best friend. I would lose the person who got me out of bed when I was ready to give up. I would lose my survival partner. Is that fair? Marcus asked. Putting that responsibility on you. It's fair to ask for help, Daniel corrected. It's fair to admit you can't do it alone. And Marcus, you're not alone. You never were. Even in the 2 hours you spent staring at that vial, I was here. Amy was here. We were all here, even without knowing it. You just had to reach out to us. Marcus leaned against Daniel, exhausted. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but the fight gets easier. Not always, not linearly, but it does. Daniel put his arm around his friend's shoulders. Remember when you told me that 5 minutes turns into 10 into an hour? Today was a bad hour, but you survived it. Tomorrow might be better, and if it isn't, we'll get through it together too. Amy returned with 2 glasses of water and sat on the other side of Marcus. She took his hand without saying anything. No words were needed, just presence. They sat there for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes just in silence. Daniel told silly stories from their childhood, making Marcus laugh through his tears. Amy brought blankets. Somehow, that early morning on the bedroom floor, a trench formed against the darkness. As the sun began to rise, Marcus finally spoke. I'll call Dr. Chen today, request an emergency appointment. Good, Daniel said. And I'll stay here with you until then, and after the session, for as long as you need. I don't deserve you, Marcus whispered. You deserve all the best, Daniel replied. Until you believe that, I'll believe it for you. Deal? Marcus nodded, exhausted, but alive. 5 more minutes? As many 5 minutes as you need. A year after Robert's call, Daniel sat on a makeshift stage in the basement of a Minneapolis community church. Before him, about 20 people sat on folding chairs, all sharing one thing in common, a battle with depression. My name is Daniel, he began, his voice still shaky but firm. And a year ago, I was in your shoes, completely lost, without hope, convinced that life would never make sense again. He glanced at Marcus, sitting in the front row next to Amy. His friends smiled encouragingly. Beside them were Tyler, Sarah, and even Dr. Patterson, who had come to support her patient. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everything is perfect now, Daniel continued, because it's not. Last week I had a day where I could barely get out of bed. But you know what the difference is? I knew it would pass, and it did. The next day I woke up, went to work, had lunch with a friend, and lived. I really lived. A woman in the third row named Karen shyly raised her hand. How did you get there? How did you go from barely getting out of bed to actually living? Daniel thought carefully. It wasn't a magical transformation. It was a series of tiny choices. At my lowest point, a friend was going through something even worse, and somehow saving him saved me too. We made a stupid pact, survive 5 minutes at a time. And those 5 minutes became 10. 10 became an hour became a day. He saw heads nodding. They understood. Everyone there understood this particular struggle. But the most important thing, Daniel said, his voice gaining strength, was to stop trying to do this alone. I had to swallow my pride and accept help, therapy, medication, calling friends at 3 in the morning when the thoughts got too bad, building a safety net of people who cared. An older man in the back, Brian, cleared his throat. What if you don't have those people? What if you've driven everyone away? So you start over, Daniel replied. I pushed everyone away too. I said horrible things, burned bridges, convinced myself I was better off alone. But the truth, humans aren't meant for solitude, so I had to rebuild, one apology at a time, one honest conversation at a time. After the meeting, people approached Daniel, some just to shake his hand, others to share their own stories. One young woman in her 20s, Emma, stayed until the end. I tried to kill myself 3 months ago, she said softly. My sister found me, and ever since, I've carried so much shame, like I'm broken, defective. Daniel looked at her with deep understanding. You're not broken. You were in such deep pain that death seemed the only relief. But you survived, and now you're here seeking help. That's not shameful, it's brave. Does it get easier? She asked, tears in her eyes. It gets different, Daniel replied honestly. Some things get easier, others remain difficult, but you learn to navigate better. And Emma, that place you were 3 months ago, you don't have to go back there. There are tools, people, strategies. You don't have to fight alone. After everyone left, Daniel, Marcus, Tyler, and Sarah went to dinner at a restaurant they used to frequent in high school. The conversation flowed naturally. Jokes, memories, plans for the future. Do you realize how far we've come? Sarah said suddenly, looking at Daniel and Marcus. A year ago, I was terrified that I would lose my brother, and Marcus, Amy called me every day crying, not knowing what to do. What now? Marcus teased with a smile. Now you're here laughing, joking, helping other people. It's surreal. Tears of happiness shone in her eyes. Tyler raised his soda. Cheers to the survivors, to the fighters, and to the next 5 minutes. Everyone clinked their glasses, the sound resounding like a promise. Later that night, Daniel was in his apartment, now clean, organized, with live plants in the windows. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at him was different from the one from a year ago. He had more weight to his body, color in his face, life in his eyes. But most importantly, I had hope. Her phone rang. A message from Emma, the girl from the meeting. Thanks for today. I was able to promise 5 more minutes, then 5 more, still here. Daniel smiled and typed back, I'll always be here if you need me. You're stronger than you think. He opened his laptop and began writing. He'd started a blog a few weeks ago, 5 minutes at a time, sharing his journey, his struggles, his victories. The messages he received from strangers saying his words had helped them get through another day were surprisingly healing. As he wrote, Daniel realized something fundamental. His pain had purpose. All that suffering, all that darkness had become a bridge to help others cross their own abysses. He wasn't cured. He probably never would be completely cured, but he was alive, he was fighting, and he was making a difference. And in that moment, looking out the window at the lights of Minneapolis twinkling in the night, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude for being alive. 5 more minutes. Always 5 more minutes. 2 years after that day in the hospital, Daniel was at the Minneapolis airport waiting for his flight. He had been invited to speak at a national mental health conference in Boston, something he never imagined he would do. The blog, 5 minutes at a time, had grown beyond his expectations, reaching thousands of people across the country. As he waited at the boarding gate, he mentally reviewed his talk. There were no elaborate slides or impressive statistics, just his story. Raw, honest, real. His phone rang. Marcus. "Hey, celebrity speaker," Marcus joked. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Daniel admitted with a laugh. "I'm going to tell 300 people about the time I went 3 days without showering and considered jumping off a balcony. Not exactly glamorous." "It's true," Marcus corrected, "and truth is what people need, not glamour. Daniel, you're going to save lives today, just like you saved mine, just like you saved your own." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. "How are you, really?" "Honestly, I've had a rough week. Too much work, not enough sleep, and the bad thoughts are back." Marcus paused. "But I called Dr. Chen. We adjusted my medication. I talked to Amy. I did everything right this time, and it passed. I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of both of us," Marcus replied. "Look where we are, man. Look how far we've come since that hospital room." After they hung up, Daniel observed the people around him at the airport. A businessman staring blankly at his laptop, a young woman discreetly wiping away tears, a teenager with headphones on, his shoulders slumped in silent resignation. How many of them were fighting invisible battles? How many were drowning alone? He grabbed his phone and opened the blog's Instagram. He posted a simple photo, a view of the airport with the caption, "Going to speak in Boston. If you're reading this and struggling today, know this. You're not alone, not even a little bit. And the next 5 minutes are doable. Just promise me this, 5 more minutes." Within minutes, the comments started pouring in. "Thanks, I was about to give up. 5 more minutes. Your blog saved me last month. Today I got out of bed for the first time in a week. My brother has been gone for 6 months. Your story gives me hope that I will survive this pain." Daniel read each comment, his heart breaking and mending simultaneously with each word. In Boston, in the grand auditorium, Daniel took the stage. 300 faces stared at him, some curious, others clearly carrying their own pain. He took a deep breath and began. "My name is Daniel, and 2 years ago, I was a dead man still breathing." For 40 minutes he shared everything. The suffocating darkness, Robert's connection, the pact with Marcus, the setbacks, the small victories, the slow, painful rebirth. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't pretend it was easy or quick. "Depression told me so many lies," he continued, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "It told me I was a burden, that the world would be better without me, that no one cared, that the pain would never end." He paused, looking directly at the audience. They were all lies, every single one. He saw people wiping away tears, nodding, seeing their own stories reflected in his. If you take one thing away from what I've said today, let it be this. You don't have to be okay to ask for help. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to survive the next 5 minutes, and then another 5, and keep surviving until one day you realize you're not just surviving, you're living. When he finished, the silence in the auditorium was deafening. Then slowly, one person began to applaud. Then another. Within seconds, 300 people were on their feet, applauding not for him, but for their shared victory over darkness. That night, back at the hotel, Daniel received an email. The sender was Robert, Marcus's father. Daniel, I never got the chance to thank you properly. When I called you that day, I was desperate, not knowing if my son would survive. You didn't just save Marcus, you gave me my son back. Today he's happy, healthy, full of plans for the future, and it all started with that phone call, with your stupid 5-minute pact. You're a hero, even if you don't see yourself that way. Thank you for not giving up on Marcus, on yourself, on all of us. With love and eternal gratitude, Robert. Daniel read the email 3 times, tears streaming freely. He thought about how he'd been in that messy apartment 2 years ago, counting stains on the ceiling, convinced his life had no purpose. Now he knew the truth. Sometimes our greatest purpose is born from our greatest pain. Sometimes the reason we survive hell is so we can return and help others find their way out. He opened his laptop and started writing a new blog post. Dear survivors, today I spoke to 300 people about my darkest days. And you know what I realized? Each of us is a walking miracle. Every person who chooses to stay 5 more minutes when every cell in their body is screaming to give up, that is pure heroism. If you're reading this from the dark, know this: I've been there, Marcus has been there. Thousands of people who write to me have been there. And we survived, not perfectly, not without scars, but we survived, and you can too. 5 more minutes. That's all I ask. Just 5 more minutes. With love from the other side of the darkness, Daniel. He hit publish and closed his laptop. Outside, Boston glowed in the night. Somewhere in this city, someone was fighting. In Minneapolis, Marcus was probably sleeping next to Amy, alive and well. Across the country, thousands of people were waging silent battles, but none of them were truly alone. Not anymore. Daniel looked into the hotel mirror. The man reflected had tired but kind eyes, shoulders that had carried too much weight, yet remained erect. He was a survivor, a warrior, a beacon to others lost in the darkness. And for the first time in his life, Daniel was genuinely happy to be alive. His phone vibrated one last time before he fell asleep. A message from Emma, the girl from the reunion a year ago. Daniel, today I enrolled in college. I'm going to study psychology. I want to help people like you helped me. Thank you for teaching me that 5 more minutes is always worth it. Daniel smiled, put away his phone, and turned off the light. Tomorrow would be a new day, with new challenges, perhaps some bad days, certainly some good ones. But it would be a day he would live to see. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. 5 minutes at a time, always. If you've made it this far, to the end of this journey with Daniel and Marcus, it says a lot about you. It says you understand that real stories, even painful ones, have power. That you weren't looking for something superficial, you were looking for truth. And look, if this story touched you in any way, if you saw yourself in any of it, leave a comment. This message was for me. You don't need to explain anything. You don't need to tell your story if you don't want to. Just leave that sentence there. Because that way I know you made it to the end, and that somehow these words mattered. If this content resonated with you, please leave a like. It's not about numbers, it's about connection. It's about knowing this message reached those who needed to hear it. And look, I bring stories like this here on the channel, stories that aren't afraid to talk about what's real, about struggle, about starting over. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. You'll be part of a community that understands that life isn't about being perfect. It's about moving on. There's a video right here that covers exactly this topic. Click it and follow me there. Let's go together. Remember, 5 more minutes. It's always worth it. A big hug, and see you next time.